everybody. Welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp, joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Who didn't check the levels ahead of time, so apologies if that was a little loud, everyone.
Listen, we're not on the level, all right? We take it to 11.
Apparently, I can just feel my my audio mentors cringing.
Do you want to take this one to 11? I was thinking this could be the show where we take it to 11.
Where exactly is 11?
Just above 10.
Why don't you just make 10 louder?
No, it goes to 11 though. but it's to 11.
Do you realize something really sad?
Oh god, that came out 900 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that what you're gonna say?
Well, I'm basically saying that, like, if you're under the age of, like, 25, you have no idea what the fuck we're talking about, unless you are, like, a classic rock nerd.
For those under 25 or not under 25 who just happen to miss this piece of pop culture, we were quoting Spinal Tap.
And you need to go watch it.
The first mockumentary, I think. One of the first.
It is so amazing.
It's pretty incredible.
As someone who's been in the music industry and in bands, it is shockingly true to life. It is just shockingly so.
Well, the part that always sticks with me is when so for those who haven't seen it, they go through a bunch of back and forth on the stage design, and picture like a big rock show like Kiss or something with all this shit, props and shit. And so they talk about this giant Stonehenge that they're going to put down, but they discuss it, and he writes down on a napkin that he wants it to be like 3 inches by 5 inches instead of feet or something.
Yeah. And
so when it finally arrives on stage in the middle of the song, it's lowered down behind them, and it comes up to like his shin.
And then they were gonna have they were gonna walk through it and around it, but instead they get two dwarves to do that.
But that always sticks with me because there's been so many just like, I don't have any, in all of my stand-up, I've never had reason nor, the money and people to have any kind of stage backdrop really. But I just show up and they'll there's like a bathroom behind the stage, like on the stage. So it's and I'm like, oh, that's great that's good optics there. Or just like exposed wiring hanging down. There's just always weird shit. I've played in so many weird venues with just crazy shit on stage. And
I remember one that it almost felt like it was part of your setup because it was just like so blatantly capitalist that it kind of like fit in somehow in this weird juxtaposition. But you played a show and there was like an ATM like right next to the stage. And the light from the ATM was like so fucking bright. Just like these, a huge green neon sign that looked like it was from the Riddler, in Batman that just said ATM. And you're up there talking about like fuck capitalism. And it's like ATM.
And yeah, it was like it'd been lowered down from some star that had come to Earth, like ATM. So I ended up like covering it up with a jacket or something. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. That always stuck with me from Spinal Tap. Apparently, as long as we're on this train of thought, Steve Martin, who was the largest selling stand-up comedian of like all time when he was doing it, he was selling out stadiums. The day he finally quit and he quit like out of the blue. Like very few stand-up comedians are like, I'm done doing stand-up forever right now as I'm selling out stadiums. That just doesn't really happen. But he did that. And this was one of the reasons. This is not the only reason he did it, but was he had a bit where, a lot of people remember his King Tut bit where he would dance around like Egyptian and sing silly King Tut song lyrics. And anyway, part of the thing was he would dance over to a guitar that had been lowered down on strings from like a ceiling that's 100 feet in the air, and this magical lit guitar comes down from the ceiling slowly right at like arm level, and he struts over to it and then plays one chord and then struts away, and then the guitar is brought back into the ceiling. Like that was the joke, is that it was all for one chord. So anyway, he struts over to do that 3 nights in a row, and the guitar never comes down. And that was when he was like, fuck this, I'm done.
That's amazing. That's very meta comedy inside of the comedy.
I know, because he was kind of mocking the idea of this guitar coming down from the ceiling, and then he's made to look like a mockery of what he wanted to do.
Yeah. See, my band never did like the sort of stage theatrics. I kind of wish we had because the fuck ups would have been amazing. But yeah, I mean, I remember hearing one about Rob Halford from Judas Priest, where he's supposed to, ride in on a motorcycle, and for some reason there was like this low hanging. Like I guess it was like a piece of the setup, but a low hanging piece of the setup. So he gets like clotheslined by it as he's riding in on the motorcycle.
Like knocked on the floor.
And dude just in typical like metal fashion, dude gets up and he's like bleeding profusely and he just carries on.
Ugh, that would not be fun.
I don't know what happened to the motorcycle though, because I feel like that could very easily just skid into the crowd.
Oh yeah, and that'll kill someone. Like a motorcycle
Totally.
coming at you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
those are not soft. Did you know that they're not soft?
No, and they're filled with flammable, flammable liquid.
Burning hot. So we're doing a bit of a. You might already be able to tell. We're doing a bit of an interesting episode. We're gonna make this a bit more chit chatty than normal, but we're still talking about the hard topics. We're gonna dig in a little bit to Occupy and to 9/11. Because those are the two big anniversaries this week. You got Occupy's 10th anniversary, which I did a segment on Redacted tonight about this, and either it's the most suppressed thing I've ever put on YouTube, or nobody gives a fuck. One or the other.
I feel like it's the former.
I'm thinking it's probably that it's suppressed because it's like gotten like practically no views compared to what a normal episode gets, and
which is so funny that they're still afraid.
They're still that scared. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's remarkable.
Occupy's at the top of their like banned terms list.
Yeah.
You couldn't even do a video on like occupying a plain bathroom.
It's occupied. No, it's not.
Yeah, they'd be like, don't show that to anyone. And 9/11's 20th anniversary. So, where do you want to begin, or should I begin on this day in history?
Oh yeah, do this day.
Let's do it. Let's do a quick this day in history.
I feel like we should have some kind of sound effect for that.
Boo doo doo doo.
I guess you know what? We'll go with that until something better shows up, which could be any minute now.
You're the musician.
I didn't say could you come up with something.
Hurry up and
It has to marinate, Lee.
It has to marinate.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Are we doing this?
I'm working on it. Well, I lost the one I wanted to read. All right. Give me one more second. Got it. Okay. In this day in history, so we're recording this on a Tuesday, September 14th. In 1814 was the Battle of Baltimore. And the poem, Defense of Fort McHenry, is written by a dude named Francis Scott Key. The poem is later used as the lyrics for the Star-Spangled Banner. Now, what they don't mention, and very few people mention when they talk about the Star-Spangled Banner or when we sing it at football games and everywhere else, is that there is a forgotten verse, or an intentionally forgotten verse. I don't know if it can count as forgotten.
Intentionally covered up verse.
Yeah, covered up verse. I'll read the whole verse, but then I'll bit translate because the lingo from then to now is a little different. But it starts, and where is the band who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps' pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. Basically what he's saying is, he's talking about, I don't know how many, but there were a bunch of slaves that saw that the British were coming and saw that as their chance to fucking get free. And so they ran over to fight on the British side against the colonies. And he's basically saying that for any hireling and slave who turns on us, there will be no refuge.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah, there will be no refuge, and you will end up dead, the gloom of the grave. So he says that, and the following line talks about this being the land of the free and home of the brave. So how dare our slaves, the people we own as property, run away from us and join the other side, and also this is the land of the free.
But isn't that America in a nutshell? I mean, seriously. I find it so apt that the Star Spangled Banner that we still sing has that verse and just nobody talks about it. It is such a great metaphor for, the issue of race and class in this country. Like, no, it's totally there. We just totally ignore it. Right. So, just keep singing.
Right. Well, you know that line where you say, I'll fucking rip the balls off any slave that turns on me? We cool if we leave that out? It can be in the liner notes. It'll totally still be there. Totally still be there. We're just like on this recording, we'll just record a slightly different version.
Yeah, it reminds me too, I don't know all the words to the song, but we used to our school band in high school when I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, used to play Dixie a lot.
Oh yeah, I think I remember hearing it fairly often.
And for those of you who don't know, a nickname for the South was Dixie. So, the first line is, "Oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten."
Yep. Yep. And
old times, you know what that means.
And when I was growing up and I heard it, I just thought it meant remember the good old days.
Right, which it is.
Which
but,
you as a kid, you don't,
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of adults don't even fucking take the time to think about it, but it's you don't realize oh, they mean the good old days of owning people.
Right.
It's again, the second part of the verse is left off there. All right, that is today in history.
It's a totally different sound now. Yeah, so this is kind of the theme of the show, I guess, is today in history. Well, not specifically today. That was September 14th,
1891, I think.
No, that's it was the War of 1812.
Oh, sorry, 1814.
There you go. So yeah, I was like, who? What?
Yeah, well, I don't know why. I don't know why.
In 1891.
I don't know why I said it. I don't know why I said 1891 because that'd be after the Civil War.
I know.
All right. Anyway.
That's going to be on the next fake history podcast.
Shut up. Shut it. Moving along.
So. Can I just first say that it is absolutely fucking bananas that it's been 10 years since Occupy, because old lady Goldfield here feels like it was yesterday.
On the redacted episode, I said, and also you should know that Home Alone came out closer to the Vietnam War than to today. If you really want to dig deep, the T-Rex lives closer to us in history, in time, than it ever lived to the Stegosaurus.
See, I don't even know what the Stegosaurus looks like.
It's got the plates, the spiny things on the back.
Oh.
Like stegs. It's got a bunch of stegs sticking out of its saurus.
So when they show, cartoons or animations where the Stegosaurus walks past the T-Rex, that's totally inaccurate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You see an animation and they're all hanging out together.
Right.
Yeah.
But that would be like us hanging out with...
Two that did live at the same time were Triceratops and T-Rex, because Triceratops is the one giant plate head with the two horns, and then a third horn on its nose. But they've seen T-Rex. They found T-Rex bite marks in the plate head of the Triceratops.
What was the plate head made out of? Was that bone?
Bone, yeah.
Oh, ow.
It doesn't sound fun. I don't think living around then was a good time.
Well, it's all relative.
I don't think it was relaxing.
I don't know.
Might have been relaxing for the T-Rex.
Right. So that's horrifying that Home Alone came out closer to Vietnam.
So that means T-Rex kids had to walk through museums to go see the Stegosaurus and be like, whoa.
So 10 years since Occupy. Do we want to start with 9/11 or Occupy?
That is up to you. So
You know what? I feel like we could end on a high note and talk about Occupy because there's more positive to say about Occupy than there is about 9/11.
all right, let's start with 9/11.
Okay. So, of course, obviously, if, I'm assuming everyone listening to this knows what I'm talking about. Although, interesting to note, there are obviously several 9/11s because it happens every year. But
That's not as dumb as it just sounded. Yes, there are several years with 9/11. But you mean there's been several big events
well,
on
I was
9/11.
kind of saying both. But I guess the joke done fizzled.
There's been like lots of 9/11, man. Like last year
Tough
and the year
crowd.
before.
So and on the live stream that Lee and I did this past weekend, you'll note that Lee was talking about the 9/11 in 1973, which is when we staged the coup in Chile and overthrew the democratically elected leftist leader Allende.
And suicided him.
Right. Can we just start calling it Epsteined? We Epsteined him.
We Epsteined him, yes.
Although I don't want people to think that he was anything like Epstein. He was fucking a great leader that had so many plans and ideas about how
Right,
to-
little different. Yes.
Yeah, no, he
Slight-
wasn't like raping small girls.
Slight difference.
Yeah.
Difference. But similarity in that, sometimes when times are tough, you want to shoot yourself 4 times in the back of the head. Like, we've all been there.
So and there was also anyway, I'm not going to go into the other 9/11s, but so 9/11 2001, been 20 years since then, and something that was brought up not that long ago was the conversation about how we talk about 9/11, which obviously, the way that we typically talk about it is hashtag never forget. They hate us for our freedoms, which is what George Bush said with regards to why they did this, which is just like...
Yep, that's it.
Which
They
is interestingly
hate us
enough
for our freedom.
what we do. Like, we overthrew Allende in Chile because we hated him for the freedoms that he was trying to institute.
Yeah, we hated the economic freedom of not being a capitalist society.
Right. So, interestingly enough, that's what the U.S. does. And so there's a friend of mine was saying that when 9/11 happened, because for those who lived through it, you very much remember where you were. It's kind of like my dad's generation remembers where they were when JFK was assassinated, when MLK was assassinated. Like, these things get burned into your memory.
When is sex you were like on the toilet or something? That's the story you had to tell.
I know that is. Well, I guess it's when you heard, because you wouldn't hear about it on the toilet in the 60s because you wouldn't have had a phone with you on the toilet.
I'm at 9/11, but someone could be.
Yeah, but we didn't have smartphones then.
We didn't have smartphones, but someone could yell at you, "Dude, get out here!" They just flew planes into the towers.
Then I feel like you'd start the story when you walked out of the shitter. I feel like that would be the beginning of the story for you.
All right, we're gonna need people to email us about whether anyone was in the shitter when they found out.
So a friend of mine was in a college class when she found out, and her professor's immediate response was, "Well, the U.S. had that coming." This was up in Canada.
Ooh, let me guess. He was fired and never heard from again.
I don't know, but like the class was shocked. But then, they started to have the conversation about, okay, well, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that it's okay what happened, but what does what is talking about the context give us in terms of understanding why it happened? So, for instance, bin Laden himself, said very clearly, quote, "Why are we fighting and opposing you? The answer is very simple, because you attack us and continue to attack us."
Yeah, people like to. I mean, because this is an uncomfortable thing to talk about, and because it hurts the propaganda image of the United States of being this noble and just country, they don't they won't allow that discussion, but you can have the discussion as to why this happened without saying, yeah, I hope a lot of people die. Like, and people want to conflate the two in order to shut up the conversation.
Right. Even Ron Paul, everyone's favorite libertarian, if you have one. Even Ron Paul, he withdrew this remark later, but his remark
Turns
after
out remarks you can't withdraw.
I know,
They're
right?
just there.
Commented on this, and I believe it was in a debate with Rudy Giuliani. He said, "Have you ever read about the reasons they attacked us? They attacked us because we have been over there. We've been bombing Iraq for 10 years." This was obviously after we invaded Iraq the second time. "I'm suggesting we listen to the people who attacked us and the reason they did it." We're talking about an unpopular opinion. Hashtag unpopular opinion. So, and then Giuliani then said, I would ask the congressman to withdraw that comment. And so, and then he did.
And then he went, "Oh, oops, I said the truth. I'm sorry. That moment I said the truth. Can we cut that from the record?"
Well, Ron Paul's response to that was then, quote, "I believe very sincerely when the CIA teach and speak about blowback. If we think that we can do what we want around the world and not incite hatred, then we have a problem. They don't come here to attack us because we are rich and free. They attack us because we are over there." End quote. Which, so let me make it very clear. I don't love Ron Paul, but he's fucking spot on about that. And it actually reminds me of something Chris Hedges said when I went to go see him speak once, which was, when we speak to the world in a language of hatred and violence, we can't be surprised when they speak the same language back.
Yep.
So and for me, I was in a U.S. history class, like in, what was it? I guess it was 8th grade, I think, when 9/11 happened. And here's what's funny, and not haha, but strange. If I'd actually been learning U.S. history, I would have not only heard the name Osama bin Laden before, because, he'd been on the payroll from the U.S. government for years.
Right.
But I would have understood the context vis-a-vis like what, Ron Paul's talking about.
Right.
That people don't, unless they're the United States, bomb for no fucking reason. They do it as a response to something. And while 9/11 was certainly horrific, and I certainly don't agree with it as a tactic, you have to look at the context as to why. It's the same thing when people talk about why are there so many mass shootings. Okay, well let's look at the culture of toxic masculinity, and how that is tied to to owning and using guns as a way to prove that you're quote unquote manly. You have to look at the context.
A society where economic force has destroyed people's lives, so you have so many people miserable. Some of them turn in on themselves and then decide killing others is going to solve their problems. Like, yeah, there's so many things to discuss there, but then people think if you discuss them, you're justifying them. And it's not true.
And so it's very important to make that distinction. But so there's a great article on Consortium News about why Americans aren't taught about the backstory of 9/11, and it goes through a list of U.S. involvement, putting it nicely. Things like Eisenhower's coup attempt in Syria. And our meddling in the Middle East, which didn't start post 9/11,
bringing down the socialist government of Afghanistan and funding the Taliban, and then funding the Mujahideen.
Exactly. So understanding this historical context is super important for understanding what then happened. Again, if I'd been learning U.S. history in that class, I would not have been absolutely dumbfounded, because of course, I think everybody, not just Americans, but everybody around the world, like my Swedish friends as well, were like, why did they do this? Why? That was this big question, because no one fucking learns the context around U.S. imperial violence.
Yeah. And it's some of it is just idiocy. The fact that they there's many people that probably are on MSNBC and CNN that don't even know their facts on this shit. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is by intent. I mean, a lot of it is by design to make sure that Americans don't understand the context of these things so that you can't start to put together the reality of being the American empire, what it really means, how many people we've harmed, over decades and decades. And I don't want to take your line, especially if you're about to say it, but that the victims of 9/11 are victims of U.S. imperialism.
Absolutely. You can take it. Take and run, dude.
Because it's a great point.
Well, yeah, and I think that, when we talk about what the U.S. casualties of 9/11, I think it's really important that we include them in the context of U.S. imperialism. They died because of U.S. imperialism, and if we don't talk about it that way, it's dishonest to their lives and their deaths, and it's dishonest to, again, the context surrounding the events which happened.
And clearly we've learned our lesson, because right now we are funding Al Qaeda and offshoots of Al Qaeda, and funding the Taliban during our 20 years.
ISIS.
20 years in Afghanistan, and creating ISIS, and sending arms and guns and weapons and everything over to Syria, and to put them into the hands of quote unquote moderate rebels that don't exist. And so we're doing exactly the same things. And by the way, so we're not going to get through like all the whole play-by-play of 9/11 in this episode. If you want a deeper kind of like note by note what happened in 9/11, then I did that on Government Secrets. Government Secrets with Graham Elwood. Graham Elwood is a good co-host.
Oh my God.
So, Government Secrets. But yes, for those of you maybe screaming at your, I was going to say screaming at your microphone, screaming at your earbuds. I don't know what you'd scream. There's nothing to scream at.
The ether.
Screaming at the ether. Yes, in that episode, we talk about the funding. We talk about Saudi Arabia, the 28 pages that was redacted for 15 years and then finally revealed that portions of the Saudi Arabian, oligarchy, theocracy, helped fund these hijackers. The fact that the CIA knew they were in the U.S., they knew they were at flight schools. They had a lot of understanding that they were planning something, and that the CIA actually blocked the FBI from finding out about these things, that the PNAC, the Project for the New American Century, had, founded by Bill Kristol and Robert Kagan, and included basically like half the members of the Bush White House, Cheney, all those guys, Rumsfeld. They had said in order to achieve the ends they wanted, both in terms of attacking the Middle East, in terms of creating endless surveillance of American citizens, et cetera, they needed a, quote, Pearl Harbor-like event. Mm-hmm. And so basically it seems overly evident that they were allowing something like this to happen so that they could achieve all of their ends. And immediately after it happens, they say, Wesley Clark has revealed that they said they were going to invade 7 countries in 5 years. That's like the day after. How could they, if this was truly like we had no idea anything would ever happen, how is it that they've got a fucking document ready to go saying we're going to invade 7 countries in 5 years?
Yeah, they've got their 5-year plan.
They've got their 5-year plan ready to go. And they did ultimately invade almost all of them, not in 5 years, but close. And so and then you get into like a grayer area that I personally believe that they didn't know that the towers were the target, probably, but I can't prove that one way or the other. On Government Secrets, we go in depth about how Flight 93 was like totally shot out of the air. Like, it doesn't even seem like it's a question, but.
Well, right, and I think the idea about questions is very important. I have a lot of questions about what happened that day, not least of all, things like Building 7 and shit like that. Yep. But I don't have this. I think one of the problems, and I'm not going to get too into the weeds because I know that it's just going to open up a fucking can of worms. But
we almost called this show Can of Worms. So. Feel like we open one every week.
So why are so many things in cans? It's a can of whoop ass. It's a can of worms. Why is it all cans, by the way?
Well, yeah, but the can of whoop ass you want to open. The can of worms you don't want to open. So you got to keep them carefully labeled.
What if my worms are part of my whoop ass?
You whoop ass with worms? If you've got ass worms, then you have to take pills for that. That's like a pills thing.
Well, no, but what if that's part of my like tactic?
Is to
Like
hit
I
'em with-
open the
hit 'em
can
with
of
your ass worms.
Yeah. You tell me, wouldn't that make you
It'd be
retreat?
pretty. Oh yeah, I'd retreat quickly. I think if you just brought out the can of ass worms, I'd probably leave at the
That's what I'm
least.
saying.
Okay.
The element of surprise, dude. That's all I'm saying is, get a little creative.
Now, is this like the Jack in the Box thing? Like you open it and they spring out, or you got to dump them on the?
I think it depends on how agitated they are. If you shake the can first,
Okay.
I think they're more likely to spring.
All right. Yeah, I haven't studied ass worms much.
So yeah, I think with regards to, what happened that day, there are a lot of questions, and I think it's really tempting to jump to a conclusion and say, I got it, I figured it out. But I think at the end of the day, we can agree that the official narrative is not right, and at the same time not jump to the conclusion that they were sitting in a back room talking about blowing up these buildings.
I mean, George W. Bush was definitely like scaling the towers the night before with a backpack of thermite.
Okay, so obviously, we've talked about a little bit about like the context surrounding that day. I think it's also, Lee, you just brought up the fact that we had this 5-year plan already good to go. And
Yep.
the fallout after we invaded Afghanistan was purposeful and horrific and continues to this day. I also think it's very important to note. So we went into Afghanistan, and then in December of 2001, like 3 months later, the Taliban surrendered. Or tried to, should I say. They tried to surrender. And the U.S. just legit said no. Like a petulant fucking shit.
Yeah.
Just said no, because that's no fun. We got our war machine all good to go, and we can't be done in 3 months. Mommy, I want to stay longer.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it didn't serve the overall purposes
Right.
of what the United States wanted. The United States did not just want to get Osama bin Laden. We wanted to basically turn Afghanistan into a failed state. We wanted to have a kind of an outpost to invade other Middle Eastern countries. We wanted to use 9/11 to crush, civil liberties here in the United States and around the world. So there were so many things that invading Afghanistan was just the beginning of. If they, in the first 2 months, would have been like, we got him, it's over, then they couldn't do all of those things they wanted to do.
right. Yeah. It's, which again, this feels obvious probably to anybody listening to this podcast, but it's like the goal of invading Afghanistan was never as, a quick revenge for what happened on 9/11. It was always about, as you pointed out, Lee, turning Afghanistan into a failed state and, expanding the U.S. empire, expanding U.S. hegemony in that region. And I think one thing that still gives me chills to this day when I think about it is probably like around 2004 or so, I first read Perkins' book, Economic Confessions of an Economic Hitman,
Yeah.
which is a fucking great book, and you should all go read it if you haven't. But I can't remember where he is. I think he's in Southeast Asia somewhere, but he's sitting with some people at like a dinner, right? And then, somebody comments, well, the next place that the U.S. is going to go to is the Middle East. And this was like in the 80s or something. And Perkins is like, what? And they're like, oh yeah, just watch. Like, you guys are going to end up in a total fucking quagmire in the Middle East. And that still gives me fucking chills to this day when I read that, because, this was like a year after we went to Iraq, 3 years after we went to Afghanistan. And I was like, holy shit. Like, again, if you understood context and you understood
Right.
the U.S. empire, this was not at all surprising what happened. And so the fallout that we're still, of course, dealing with is, not we, Afghanistan and the Middle East, is horrific. There have been at least, this is the UN report that suggests that there are at least 5.9 million Afghans who have fled the country or been internally displaced. And those who try to repatriate can't go home because their homes no longer exist.
Yeah.
So they're going to live in quote unquote informal settlements, which is a really nice way of saying, these fucking horrific
Refugee camps.
Right.
Yeah.
And where many people die just due to the conditions of these camps. Basic things like access to water and food are incredibly scarce. So we've turned this into an absolute, shit heap. And while somewhere in, almost 3,000 members of the U.S. military have died in Afghanistan, roughly 174,000 people in Afghanistan have died. So that's including roughly like 50,000 civilians is estimated, and roughly 70,000 Afghan military, and then 51 or so thousand Taliban fighters. But again, these are estimates.
Well, A, these are estimates, and B, the U.S. military has basically said that when they, let's say, drone bomb an area, they then count the bodies, and any male of military age is considered an insurgent or Taliban or whatever, the enemy.
Right.
And it's like, not every male of military age is actually a combatant doing anything to you. So these numbers are, may help people get some idea of how many are dying, but in terms of the categories that are put in.
Yeah. Very, very good point. Yeah, it's this sort of circular logic. Like, how do you know he was a Taliban fighter? Because we bombed him. Why'd you bomb him? Because he was a Taliban fighter. It's like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's also important to point out that far more of the U.S. military has died via suicide than actually in Afghanistan.
30,000 have died since 2001.
Via suicide.
By suicide.
Yeah.
So the number of service members who have killed themselves is over these past 20 years, far greater than the number of combat deaths in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, wherever else combined. So.
Yeah, and so 170,000 people, that's a very low estimate. The website Cost of War estimates that it's closer to 400,000. So either way, it's a shit ton, and that's not including, again, American service members. So this has been absolutely, obviously horrific for the people of Afghanistan. And obviously, another interesting point, if we hop on over to Iraq, we should definitely be very clear that, 9/11 was a horrific event, and the people who died needlessly. They also died needlessly because of U.S. empire. Important to, highlight that again. But as tweeted out by the Poor Proles Almanac a few days ago, in case you weren't keeping track, we have committed the equivalent of a 9/11 every 21 days in Iraq for the last 20 years.
A 9/11 worth of death every 21 days.
And indeed, like during the pandemic, I think you pointed out that at one point we were having a 9/11 every day because so many people were dying of COVID and the government didn't give a flying fuck. So, yeah. Hashtag never forget is super fucking selective.
Yeah.
But so the numbers that I'm going to be sharing now are from a recent report by the Institute for Policy Studies, IPS, called State of Insecurity, the Cost of Militarization Since 9/11. And, I mean, the full report is, it's a doozy. You might want to read it with a martini. But some of the key findings are, for instance, over the 20 years since 9/11, the U.S. has spent $21 trillion on foreign and domestic militarization, which is, interestingly enough, Lee, the same amount of money that's gone missing.
Yeah, these are different things, but it is
Right,
funny.
no, I know.
It is funny that it's the same number of the unaccounted adjustments at the Pentagon over 20 years. But yeah, they're talking about 21 trillion actually spent,
Right.
which is horrific and is easily enough to. It would easily be enough to probably convert like the whole world to green energy.
Well, it's funny that you should mention that, Lee, because $4.5 trillion is the price tag for fully decarbonizing the entire U.S. electric grid.
And the U.S. and so think about that. So 1/4 of the money spent on our militarization would create an entire green energy country for the United States, and the United States creates something like 25% of all global warming emissions and everything. So by doing that, you would be cutting the world's global warming carbon emissions by like a fourth.
Not to mention that the U.S. military is the world's largest polluter, and their emissions are equal to that of 140 countries. So
Yeah, but probably like the loser country.
like, what's that country that has gross domestic happiness? Fuck them.
Bhutan.
Yeah, and they had like one COVID death. $2.3 trillion could create 5 million jobs at $15 per hour with benefits and cost of living adjustments for 10 years. 1.7 trillion could erase student debt. So literally for $1.7 trillion compared to 21 trillion, you could erase the fucking dead weight that is following millions of Americans from, their late teens to the grave that they can't get out of for like a 20th of that. I mean, it's just
Yep. And you could end world hunger for 700 years.
That's
So there's that.
yeah. Not to mention, I mean, but like the list is
And by the way, folks, I wasn't a joke. That literally,
No, literally.
literally 700 years.
because what is it, like 20 billion in a year? Or something?
Yeah, they've estimated. I mean, these numbers change year to year. They've estimated it would take $30 billion to end world hunger per year.
Per year, yeah. And I think that's the other thing that I think that number does a good job of highlighting is how big a trillion is.
Well, my favorite number to try and get people to understand that is if you make $40,000 a year, in order to make $1 trillion, it would take you 25 million years. So you better
get to work.
Get started soon.
But yeah, I mean, and of course the list is endless, right? Healthcare, putting money into jobs and into public safety vis-a-vis everything from the opioid epidemic to climate change. I mean, literally anything. You could even spend that money on ensuring that everybody gets a fucking nice bottle of scotch. Like even that would be,
To kiss your ass goodbye on the way out. Enjoy this scotch on us, the U.S. government.
So yeah, I mean the cost of war, when we talk about that, of course, we talk about the dollar sign, but obviously the cost of war is far deeper than that. And I think this is, this anniversary is a really important time to reflect on just the status of the U.S. as an empire and the largest empire the world has ever seen, and the opportunity, but also the responsibility of we as children of empire to end it, to end imperialism. And that's obviously a really heavy ask, but we have that ability to overthrow this. And I think that the longer that we kind of look at the anti-war movement as something that, that's just like something old hippies do or whatever, or, the longer we are going to deal with the extreme fallout of U.S. imperialism that touches every other issue, right?
Yeah.
All of this is interconnected to climate change, as I mentioned, to domestic violence vis-a-vis the cops, like the 1033 program. They wouldn't have fucking MRAPs if it weren't for these wars.
Yeah.
So the longer that we kind of ignore the anti-war movement as a concept that we really need to give a lot of energy to, the longer our communities are going to suffer on a very like base foundational level.
And all the groups should unite to be
Of course.
against war, because even if you're a fucking asshole who wants to use the money for, garbage, you want to use the money to make the lawns look nicer in your little suburban neighborhood. Whatever. It's like everyone could unite to be against war and believe that this money should be kept home. Now, of course, there's also the fact the United States can print whatever amount of money it wants, so it could fund everything at once at any given time. But that's a side note. So we got about 15 minutes to dig into a little bit of Occupy remembrance. That's all right. I think that's enough time. But some quick notes real quick. If you want to support the show, if you feel like you get $1 worth of content each week or more, please go to liberapay.com/LeeCamp, liberapay.com/LeeCamp, and become a member over there. I have a Government Secrets live show, so a live taping of my other podcast, Government Secrets with Graham Elwood, in Los Angeles this coming Saturday, September 18th. It's like a 3 p.m. show, an afternoon show, and you can get tickets at leecamp.com. Just click the schedule tab. I hope you'll come join me if you're in Los Angeles. It's going to be a damn good time. Also, we've got, you've got a screening and a performance October 7th in Charlottesville.
I do indeed. So this is really exciting. It's a live and digital screening. There might be some musical performance by yours truly as well. Maybe.
Just possibly. If we can talk her into it.
So this is happening in Charlottesville, Virginia, and it's in conjunction. It's being sponsored by Appalachian Voices and Artivism Virginia. There's an Eventbrite where you can get tickets for both the digital and the live event. Please note that if you'd like to come to the live event, proof of vaccination will be mandatory. And so more information about that is I've tweeted about it. I put it up on Instagram. If you're on my mailing list, then you will have gotten it as well. That information is also up on hardwordofhope.com. So check that out and hope to see you there.
And radindiemedia.com. Go there for all your great leftist and independent content. We'd love for you to tell people about it. You'll notice there's no sponsors, there's no corporations connected to it, there's no ads. It's all just like great content for you to share, and I hope you'll check radindiemedia.com every day. RADINDIEMEDIA. And it's a lot of I's and E's in there. It's too many, I think. I think we should cut out like 2 I's and E's.
Totally down.
And we created that website, by the way. That's not just me getting paid to do an ad. So we created it. All right, let's move on, and I can say some more stuff at the end, but let's get to Occupy real quick.
Okay.
It is the 10th anniversary of Occupy, which you and I, before we knew each other, were both involved in.
Yes, indeed. You in New York, and I in me in LA. I in LA, me in LA. We, the royal we.
What did we just say about I's and E's? All right, cut some of them out. So, I was asked to from some people to do like a call for an occupation of Wall Street and move your money on June 14th, which was before, you might know, it happened. And the June 14th one did happen. Some people maybe a few hundred moved their money out of big banks, which was the other ask. It was occupy and move your money. But it did not get that big. But then, and this was done, I wasn't connected to this. I didn't even know what was going on. People took that June 14th action and got others to sign on to another one. And that's when you had other organizations joining in, like Adbusters and a bunch of others. And so then the September 17th one kicks off, and it's much bigger than the June 14th one. However, I was there that first night, September 17th, in Zuccotti Park, and it was, 100 to 200 people or something. It was not like, holy shit, there's thousands of people down here. And that first week, until you had the 700 arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge, was not that many, especially at night. So it started small. And to me, that kind of like gives hope, like in that some of these things may start small and you kind of don't really know until it's happening what's going to be the one that like links to the public consciousness and becomes massive.
Yeah, no, I think with Occupy, you definitely have the more like OG and cool stories. But yeah, I think that's because you were here in DC as well.
So then our friends, Margaret Flowers and Kevin Zeese, unfortunately he's no longer with us, but they helped create, or they basically, in many ways, single-handedly created the occupation of Freedom Plaza, although they weren't calling it Occupy because Occupy didn't exist yet. So theirs was called Stop the Machine, I believe. And they asked me to perform on that one, and that was starting in October. It was either like October 7th or 11th or something. And so it was basically 2 weeks after Occupy. Occupy started getting bigger. And so by the time theirs started, there was all this energy from Occupy. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, they became kind of a part of Occupy. It was kind of like the energy of Occupy around the country was so massive that and their thing was trying to do the same thing. It was saying, we're going to show up in Freedom Plaza and we're not going to leave. Right. So there was it dovetailed very nicely. And when it kicked off in Freedom Plaza, I performed, but there were some other very cool people like Dick Gregory and many others performing, also no longer with us, unfortunately. But
I didn't realize he came down here for that.
Yeah, he came down here for that. But a lot of cool things went on there, and then that occupation in Freedom Plaza went on for months because the DC police were afraid to evict things, and so it went on for it was one of the longest occupations in the country for Occupy.
Yeah, fun fact: the LAPD wanted to. The city wanted to get rid of Occupy LA anyway, but so it was outside City Hall in LA, in downtown LA. And they needed to clear it because Sean Penn had a film that needed to film there. So it was cleared for the most Hollywood reason.
Well, and it's funny that it's Sean Penn because he's like the quintessential kind of liberal, thinks like
survivor,
like angrily
savior,
angrily political, but just to support Democrats.
Right.
So he's like angrily like the right wing is destroying the country. What they're doing is awful. They're trying to stop people from voting. He'll say a bunch of things you agree with. And then literally, I remember in 2016 or after 2016, his answer, he said in an interview, he said, if Hillary had just picked John Kasich as her running mate, a right-wing ideologue fucking twat bag, if she had just picked him
who's the twat bag? Hillary or Kasich?
All the above. Anybody who ran for president. If he had just been her VP, then all would have been well. We would have defeated Trump. And he's like, I reached out to Hillary's campaign. I was trying to let her know. And it's like, could you imagine thinking that not only Hillary in an office is a wonderful thing, but if she just had a Republican VP,
right,
then all would be well.
You have to offset her extreme leftist ideologies with something, Lee. You need that balance, okay?
Yeah. She is way too left wing. Yeah, totally.
Oh, that hurts. But yeah, I think kind of wrapping up here. Like I said, I wanted to end on a high note. I think.
Well, don't wrap up yet.
Well, no. Oh, okay.
I want to talk about how Occupy wasn't defeated.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm going to get into.
All right. It sounded like a closing.
That's the leaving on the
sounded
high
like
note.
A closing sentence.
No.
Okay. So fuck Sean Penn. Good night.
I'm out. No, but I think so. There's always, since Occupy ended, there's been commentary on, it didn't do what it was supposed to do, which I think is so funny because you could say that about basically everything.
Every protest that's ever existed.
Well, like even like the French Revolution, like, well, they didn't do what they said they were going to do. I mean, look at fucking Napoleon. It's like, yeah, okay. So I guess we should just avoid ever fighting for human rights because, you know, shit might not turn out the way it does in your dreams. And then fuck it, there's no point. So
and think of all the like sit-ins that ultimately led to civil rights, but at the time, it was like, we went and sat in this diner, we got spat in the face, and then a guy got his teeth knocked out, and that was the end of it. So glad we did that.
Well, and it's like you could also make the argument that like, okay, well, civil rights didn't work because there's still racism in America.
Right.
Yeah, that's very true. But should we just say that that was totally worthless?
Right.
So I think like, first of all, there's always, as opposed to, you know, analyzing anything the government does, there's always this absolutely unrealistic set of, analytical demands laid at the feet or on the shoulders of any kind of movement. Like if you didn't topple capitalism, then all of that work was totally pointless. Right. And I think like, so one of the things that I would point out pretty much even during Occupy, but also after it, was this has shifted the conversation. Before this happened, nobody was talking about Wall Street. The concept of income inequality.
Just like one Chomsky book.
Right.
That was it.
And then like, you know, Confessions of an Economic Hitman and like Naomi Klein's shock doctrine and shit. But like nobody was talking about income inequality vis-a-vis the 1% and the 99%. Just that paradigm that, oh, wow, it really is that bad. Like that wasn't something that was discussed. And so just the power of creating that shift in consciousness, a shift in paradigm where I would like to say that the people that are now like 15, 16 would not have the radical perspectives that so many of them do without Occupy.
Yeah, and I don't think you would have, and if people want a longer explanation of this, I did it on Redacted Tonight this past week, but I don't think you would have had the Bernie Sanders movement. I get that ultimately it was sold out and co-opted, and now you have Our Revolution saying they support Biden's ideas, which is fucking ridiculous. So I'm not acting like that to this day is still wonderful, but I think that you wouldn't have had the Bernie Sanders movement. You wouldn't have had. It's possible that you wouldn't have even had Black Lives Matter and Standing Rock pop off in the way that they did without this kind of understanding of protest and understanding of our situation that came from Occupy. There's so many things that it altered and expanded the understanding for so many people of what is possible, of, it seemed like more was possible. It seemed like we could get closer. And so each of these things, I mean, ideological revolution goes in fits and starts. It's not a straight line. And I think that was a very powerful moment that continues to ripple through our society today. And, one thing I said on Redacted Tonight was that people were like, the Occupy failed because it didn't have clear demands. And it was like, we were a scrappy group of a few, thousands of people across the country who were unarmed and peaceful and trying to fight, using tents and signs, trying to fight the largest, most powerful, most corrupt system that has ever existed in humankind, with control of the most powerful and largest military that's ever existed in humankind. And you're surprised that we didn't topple capitalism? That's like saying that. I saw a Chevy Tahoe run over some ants the other day, and I think it's because they didn't have their demands nailed down.
Well, and here's the thing. I think it's also important to, like inside of our movements, be analytical about what worked and what didn't. I think there's a lot about Occupy that didn't work, that was done poorly. And I think that it's okay and it's necessary, in fact, to go back and to look at it and be like, okay, well, this didn't work. How can we do this better? Because it's the only way that your tactics become stronger, more direct.
I know next time I need more lumbar support. I'm
That's for
sleeping.
sure. Although I have to say, back in those days, I could sleep on pretty much anything and be fine. Now I'm like, excuse me, how supportive is the mattress? Okay, I'm gonna need 2 pillows.
I think there's a frozen pea underneath my mattress, and it's really bothering me.
Dude, now the last time that I went to like a frontline fight, and you got like your sleeping bag and shit, I had like 2 mattress pads and like 2 travel pillows. I definitely pack for the front line like an old lady, but you know what? I'm fine with that. But with regards to, your point about, Occupy making things like Standing Rock, more possible. I think that that's a very good point. I remember talking to somebody who had been out to Standing Rock and said that they kind of reunited with some folks from their Occupy days. And I think, and they're like a little bit younger than me. And I think what Occupy did was it reignited this belief in and this understanding of direct action as a tool. Because I remember when I was speaking out against the Second Iraq War in like 2002, 2003, at least where I was in North Carolina, even though there was resistance, nobody was talking about like shutting shit down or occupying space or, those tactics that had been used. I mean, there's nothing fucking new that had been used, some like 30, 40 years earlier, just weren't really being discussed as a potential. So Occupy pushed this idea that you can fucking take up space. We have the right to hold this space. And this is a powerful tactic for visibility, for voicing these complaints and these demands. So I think that really did set off waves of direct action that touched upon a lot of issues that, again, Occupy encompassed, because Occupy was about capitalism, and therefore it was also about climate change and war and I mean, one of the things that people moaned about with regards to Occupy was that it was too broad, but I think being that it was broad, it made space to address all of these issues and find those interconnections and say and recognize that all of this does actually indeed exist under the larger umbrella of U.S. capitalism.
Also, the future is broad.
Was that a feminism joke?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you like it? The future is female.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Are we good? No, let's occupy tomorrow.
Yeah.
If anybody's got a good one they want to... I know they're doing some anniversary events in Los Angeles. I don't know if I'll get there in time. I'm doing my best, but there's one Friday, the 17th.
Really?
My show is the 18th, and so I'm going to try and go by the 17th.
Is City Hall?
I think it's City Hall, yeah.
Oh.
Your old stomping grounds.
Memories. Well, I also lived like right down the street from City Hall, so it was like really convenient.
So there are various Occupy anniversary things going on if you look them up and see if you can find one near you. But, yeah, I mean, I think the climate crisis is going to continue to create large-scale protest, and it's going to get more and more powerful, and we all should be ready and play our roles. Each of us has different roles to play, but I'd say find yours and get involved.
Amen. Happy anniversary, Occupy, and not happy anniversary to the war on terror.
So, yeah, check out liberapay.com/LeeCamp if you want to support the show. I'll be performing live for a Government Secrets taping in Los Angeles. That's this Saturday. You can get tickets at leecamp.com. Click the schedule tab. Screening of Hard Road of Hope along with a musical performance is October 7th in Charlottesville, and that's at artkillingapathy.com. Definitely check out radindiemedia.com. And if you want to email us thoughts or suggestions, commoncensored at protonmail.com. All right, guys, until next week, keep fighting.
Act out.